The recording is in process. Hey, I got a few announcements. So there are 34 people currently in the two sections. The number of submissions has risen to 26 out of 34. So that's way better than 15. Thank you. Interestingly, only 31 people have purchased the book, which means there's no way for you to do 30% of your grade. So if you need instructions on how to purchase the book, they're in the syllabus. If you need instructions on how to find the syllabus, they're linked off of the class Schoology page. And I'm not even going to suggest an alternative if you don't know how to find the Schoology page. Hey, today is the last day that you can drop a course, apparently, or is it add a course? One of the two. But I was asked to make that announcement. Want to make sure that I'm also supposed to make sure that that there are people who are attending, to make sure there are no people who are attending the course that aren't in the course. So please bear with me for a moment. And I'll try to check. Okay, let's see. So Colin P. Let's see, are you in the other class and just attending this one? Let me check. Okay, so Colin P., if you could remind me, maybe we already made arrangements for this, but I'm not seeing you as a registered student, so it's possible maybe we talked about it, but I'm just too old to remember what it is that I did yesterday. Okay.
Sure, to be honest.
Well, was that you, Colin P.?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you know what? I'm looking at, not at the members, I'm looking at the something else. I'm sorry. Let me go look again. Yes, sorry for the scare. You're in the right. If I actually can get it together this morning to look at the right list, you're actually there. So, okay, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that might have, I apologize if that was a scare.
No, you just yeah.
What's that?
So you just woke me up.
Okay, well, the class has been a success already. Okay, very good. Now let's see, there are, let's see, so I talked about the projects that are 26 out of 34. That's much better, but still. Hey, and about the projects, you know, this class is supposed to be a fun class. It's not supposed to be high pressure. I want everyone to get A's, and but there's nothing I can do if you don't turn in work. It's like there's no set of boosting of your score that I can do when it's a 0. So please help me not fail you. I don't want to do that. Okay. So how about, yeah, go ahead.
I joined late because of my Wi-Fi. Could you repeat what you said about the projects?
Okay, so there are 34 enrolled students currently, and I have received 26 projects. So that's way better than the 15, which was the other day. But still, I'd like to see, 8 more? And 31 people out of 34 have purchased the book. Now remember that your readings is 30% of your grade. So even if you were to hand in all the projects and score perfect scores on them, you'd still be looking at below a B if you don't do the readings. So where's my wet noodle? And I want to, bash some folks over the head with a wet noodle.
I have a
Actually,
question
go
about the
ahead.
reading as well. Sorry.
Yeah.
I did the first chapter reading, but in the grade book it says that it's overdue. Is that just because it hasn't been put in yet, or?
Oh, no, yeah, don't
Okay.
worry in the grade. Well, let me just check the grade book and make sure that there's nothing unexpected there. And chapter 1. And okay, yeah, I have your score listed in the grade book. Now, where the confusion may have come from is that there's nothing to turn in on the grade book. I'm sorry, on the readings. There's nothing to turn in. So at some point after the due date, I pull a report from ZyBooks and I enter the score, the aggregate score, and I round up to the next integer. So if you have a 89.01, I'll boost it up to 89.01 to 90. So I round upward. Okay. Is there any questions about class structure or workings? Okay. How about review questions? And the things that we could review anything, but of interest would be we've covered the if, and we've done in the last class the for with using a list, enumerating a list. We also did a for enumerating the range, and we did a lot of work on lists. So review questions, please. Hello, hello.
I had a question in the textbook.
Great.
Section 211, there's like a number game. Would we be able to take a look at that?
Okay, I am going to switch to a screen and I'll find it and then I'll start projecting. Additional practice, number games. And is there just the one? Yeah. Okay, so I will zoom this up a little bit so that it's more readable. And I will start projecting it. Okay. So is this the one that you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a read of the specification. Well, actually, it's based upon this one, so let's read that one first. Enter a 2-digit number into the box and press the return button. Okay, so let's run it. Enter a 2-digit number and you entered 24 and somehow you got 24, 24, 24, mind blown. And, I just can't cope. All right, so the assignment's saying, do a 3-digit number. Okay, here we are. So create a different program that takes a 3-digit number and generates a 6-digit number. Multiply the 3-digit number by 7, 11, and 13. Also, the code that's down here doesn't look like the specification. Is that just a different? Okay, let's do this is a different assignment than the one above. So I have no idea. Enter the tens digit, enter the ones digit. Okay, so it looks to me, tell me if I'm wrong, but this specification is different from 2.11.2.
That's why I was confused.
Okay, all right, well, you and me both. So let's see if we can figure this one out. So they're asking you to enter a tens digit, enter a ones digit. Then they're on line 6, they're putting the two together. Notice the number in tens times 10 plus the number in ones. So you entered, and then the none is times 11. Okay, so they're showing you maybe the steps. All right, so num out hundreds is num in tens plus. Well, this project sucks. Number out, the number out tens. Okay, so let's, what I think this is asking is, you've got a number. Well, you know what? I have no idea what range, so I'm just going to print this one out. Num out hundreds. And then I'm going to exit here. And I'll comment this. And comment this and comment this. And comment this. I have no idea what that range is. So let me find out. Let's run that. Okay. So yeah, I have no idea what this project is asking for, so screw it. Everybody gets 100. I have no idea what it's asking for. So, so here's what we do. Feedback, click. I'll click it again. There. Something else. Nary a soul in my class, nor I, could figure out what this question is asking. Perhaps some explication is in order. Okay, so I took care of it. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question on section 2.7.2, the challenge activity. I don't know why, but I had a lot of trouble trying to figure it out.
Okie dokie, I'm happy to help. Okay, so 2 point, did you say 7?
Yeah, 2.7. I think
And
that's
then,
the only, I think it's the only challenge activity there. That one, yeah.
okay, all right. So a cashier distributes change using the maximum number of $5 bills followed by $1 bills. This was actually an assignment. A change making machine is something I was thinking of assigning. Write a single statement, oh my gosh, that assigns num1s with the number of distributed $1 bills given in the given amount to change. Hint, use modulo. Okay, so line 1 puts the user input inside amount to change, and the num5s have already been calculated using the integer division. That's // that's found here. So, so whatever remains, and let's see where they want to print it. Print number of 5s and num1s. Okay, so num1s is, okay, so let's see. If we had $19 in change, oh, look, that's the example. That's where I get it from, I guess. There would be 3 $5 bills and 4 $1 bills. So notice that there can't possibly be an output of 5 $1 bills. Because if there was available a 5, it would have been accounted for with the $5 bills. So this kind of sounds like we should use their hint of using the modulo operator. So let's do this, amount to change modulo 5. And let's see if that works. And that apparently is the correct answer. So Sarah, did that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else with a review question or perhaps a question from the book?
There were actually a couple of challenges I couldn't understand,
Okay,
but
go ahead.
I think I'll just stick with the one that I was the most confused with,
All right.
if I can find it. Remember what it was in. Okay, this was 2.6.
Okay.
And it was the sphere volume one.
Sphere volume, single spaces, compound. So I guess it's a challenge, huh?
Yes.
Acceleration of gravity, the sphere volume. So given a sphere radius and pi, compute the volume of a sphere and assign sphere volume with the volume. So the volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay. So sphere volume is equal to 4/3 pi r cubed. So 4 divided by 3 times pi. And what would the sphere radius be? Cubed. Sphere radius times sphere radius times sphere radius. Okay, so let's check this. Coming up here, 4/3 pi r cubed. Notice that they put the 4/3 into a parentheses, but you don't have to, because all of that is multiply and divide. So there's no reason for those parentheses, but I will put in the 0.0. Let's see. Okay. Now, before we move on, so Colin, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's
Like, I
something
still
I'd
don't
like.
get the other ones, but this was the one I was the most confused with.
Okay, well, I'm happy to go over those if you wish, but there's something here that I'd like you to see, and it's a subject that we need to cover. So here's a print statement, and unlike all the print statements that we've done so far, which might have been print A, comma, print B, okay, this one is different, the one on line 9. Notice it says single quote, some stuff, single quote, dot format of a variable. So this is our introduction to doing string formatting. And the string here is sort of a template, which will be printed with some new information inserted. And where is it going to be inserted? In between the braces. Okay, so the syntax here says that this set of braces should be replaced with a floating point number, and it will have 2 places after the decimal. So 2 places of precision. And the value that'll be printed is coming from sphere volume. Okay, we're going to need this for project 2. Okay, so how about we do one more from the book, and Colin, that could be your choice. Or if anybody else wants to jump the line, come in ahead of Colin, turn off your cameras, meet somewhere, an agreeable spot, and duke it out, and then come back and tell us whose question it's going to be.
I mean, like, I don't know how many other people want to or have questions, but if not, could we just go over the one before and after that one that we just did?
Okay, anybody with no objections? I'll be happy to do that. So here's a challenge. Write a single statement that assigns the average of num sales. Now, how do you compute an average? Anybody?
Finds the mean, I guess.
Correct. Yes.
I don't know the correct word for it.
Well, mean average, yes, but I was wondering if you could tell me, anybody, tell me an algorithm. How do you compute an average?
Wouldn't you just add them all up and then divide by 3?
That's exactly right. And I guess perhaps for this example, the important part is doing the adding inside parentheses so that the adding happens first. So num sales 1 plus num sales 2 plus num sales 3, and close the parenthesis so that these values are summed together before you get to the divide by 3. So let's try that. Outstanding. Oh, and here's another example of that string formatting with the 2 decimal places of precision. Okay, anybody have any questions? Okay, and now down to the last one. The acceleration of gravity, compute the approximate acceleration of gravity for an object above the Earth's surface, assigning accel-gravity with the result. All right. The expression for the acceleration of gravity is g times m divided by d squared, where g is the gravitational constant. Interesting thing about the gravitational constant, they chose to express it in scientific notation. So scientific notation is generally allows for just 1 digit in front of the decimal place, and then some other digits, and then an exponent. In this case, the exponent is -11, which means shift the decimal place to the left 11 times. So this is going to be a very small number. Sample output with input. Okay. Oh, an E24, what the heck? Mass of the Earth. Oh, okay. In kilograms. Do you realize that every time we launch something into space, the mass of the Earth goes down? At some point, we'll run out of Earth if we keep going the way we're going. Okay, so they want accel gravity to be assigned let's see. I'm just wondering, do we need all of these parentheses? Well, we can't go wrong by putting them in. But it turns out not all of these parentheses are necessary, but I'll use them. G times M divided by the dist center squared. So dist center. Okay, let's try that. Oh, good. Oh, look at that, 9.81 meters per second. And interestingly, the pull of gravity way up high is just ever so slightly less. Okay. So anything other than the book that anyone would like to review?
Could you go over for loops again?
Okay, I would be happy to. Let's see, I think I'll do sharing of the iPad. Oh, is this working? Oh, wow. Good for me. Okay, so far we've seen two ways of using for. And they are conceptually quite similar in that it's for some variable will get assigned one at a time, one of the members of a collection. So we've seen if L is a list with stuff in it, we've seen this one for a variable in the list, colon, and then indented block. We've also seen for a variable, give it a name, any name you want, in the range of some range, colon, indented block. So in both these cases, you can think of this as a collection. It is. And this is a collection. It is. So both of these for loops will take in turn first the first member of the collection, then the second member of the collection, and keep going as many members of the collection as there are, assigning each into the variable that you've named. And for expediency, I just named them both V for variable, but it doesn't have to be that name. And the interior of the code block will be executed again and again and again for each value of V. How did I do? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. If we were to put if statements in, is that possible with for loops?
Sure. Any Python that's legal, any Python statements that are legal can go here or here, including other for loops. So let me write down one, and first I'll write it down and then we'll talk about it. So how about this? So that's not going to work. So for tens in range 0 to 10, and remember range stops one before the maximum value. So this is going to enumerate 0 through 9. Then a colon. And how about this? A nested for loop for ones in range 0 to 10. Print. And I'm just going to say, what does this remind you of? Remind you of, comma, tens, comma, ones. So this is going to print that silly string, plus 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, 0, 9, 1, 0. Okay. So what this reminds me of, and how you can think of a nested loop, is this reminds me of the odometer of a car. Now notice that the ones digit in this code is the innermost for loop, and it's the innermost loop that turns over the fastest, just like the ones digit of your car. Okay, and the tens in this case ticks over only once per every 10 of the ones. And if I were to include hundreds, I would code it as a for loop out here. That would be the hundreds place. And that would tick over only once every 10 ticks of the tens place. So when you have nested loops, the one that's furthest inside turns over the fastest, and then slower and slower and slower as until you get to the outside.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Here's an interesting question. Well, actually, it's not so much of a question, but there's more new knowledge. Computer people are very concerned often with performance. So if I were to write something like for v in range of 100, no semicolon, that's the wrong language. That's a colon. Okay. So a computer scientist might say, okay, in analyzing the performance of this, I say that this is linear. So this is, we even have a notation for it, the big O n. So what this is saying is that as n changes, the number of work units changes, the overall amount of work scales the same exact way. So a range of 100 is twice as much work as a range of 50. Now, interestingly, we start to get worried when we have nested loops, because suddenly, let's say we have a 4 within a 4 within, now let's just end there. This, a computer science person would say the performance is order of n squared. So that's really, really much worse than order of n. Now let's just look at it on a graph. So this is the amount of the number of work units, so to speak, and this is the amount of work. So with order n, it's a nice line. That's what we mean by linear. But for n squared, the amount of work grows very, very quickly. And we get worried about n squared, but it's very common in programming. We get really worried with n cubed, and you know, it's bad news if you want to go higher than that. Okay. The best of all worlds is order 1. And that means no matter how much work we give it, work units we give it, the amount of work is constant, and that's like the best of all worlds. Okay? Now you're all theoretical computer scientists, and you can get a low-paying job. Nobody seems to care much about theory. That's just the way it is. Okay. Any other questions? All right, I got a lot of cool stuff to do today. I'd like to first show you something pretty neat. Well, first I'll preface it by showing the project that is due next. And ooh, Anna, was that wine? Was that wine in that lovely glass?
No. It's tea.
Ah,
There's
yeah.
tea.
Well, it's tea.
No, my parents have wine glasses that they don't use, and so in order to actually have things, I have it up here to drink out of.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, tea. Yeah. Right. Cheers. Okay. Let's see. Oh yes, the project. So let's share another screen and show what the project is. So the idea, and this, so the idea is you have two common six-sided dice, whatever, and we want to do an experiment. And the goal of the experiment is to find out how common it is to roll each particular combination. Now keep in mind that the lowest number on a die is a 1. So if we have two of them, the lowest number we can roll is a 2. So that'll come in, you'll see where that comes in. The highest number is a 12. And we're going to store the results in a list. Now, let's see. Here we are. You might think that you need to create the list by enumerating or putting in some sample data for each and every member, but no, you don't have to do that. You can use a shorthand where you specify one value, and then outside of the brackets, you say how many you want. So this syntax will produce the exact same thing as this. Okay. Now you may wonder why I'm suggesting you make the list 13 members long, when in fact the dice combination can give you what? Only 2 through 12. So that's what, 11, 10, 11, I can't count. So let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 11 different outcomes from 2 dice. Yet I'm suggesting you make your list 13 members long. And the reason for that is it makes your program slightly easier. Because remember I said that the lowest number you can roll is a 2. So if we wanted to count the number of 2s, we could just use the output of the, oh, that was cool. Anybody getting headaches? Outer limits, we control your television. Okay, so we can just use the sum of the 2 dice as the index into the list. And just don't worry about, and don't consider list sub 0 and list sub 1. Just make believe these are not here when you do your calculations. So the reason once again, the reason I suggested making it 13 long is so that you can use the output of the dice, the sum of the 2 dice, directly as the index into the histogram. Okay, so you're going to do some string formatting. And the string formatting is in chapter 3.8. And this is what I'd like you to produce. It'll ask you for a number of trials, a number of experiments, and it will use this list as a way of summing up all of the results, storing all of the results. So each time you roll a 2, that would be incremented. Each time you roll a 12, that would be incremented. Okay. So this would be boring if we don't do something really, really old school, and I'm so pleased that I thought of adding this. Let's take a look. Oh, yeah, and you'll do your own function, but let's come back here. Let's see if you can see this. I can actually demonstrate it live. Okay, so here is my version of the program. And what I want you to do is print out the intermediate results every 10 loops. So you get to use the mod operator again. So every 10 loops, print out the results. But if you were to do this without this like real old school hack, you'd get thousands of lines of output, and that would be no fun. So I'm showing you how to manipulate the cursor on your screen. Watch what happens. I'll input, let's say, 1 million trials. So you see what's happening? Every 10th trial, it is clearing the screen and showing you the intermediate results. Okay? So the syntax that you need, what you need to print in order to clear the screen, is given here. Okay? These are called escape sequences, largely because that character is the value of the escape key on your keyboard. So this first one says, go to the H says, go to line 1, column 1, and then the next one says, erase to the end of screen.
I cannot see what you are hovering over with your cursor.
Ah, thank you. Thank you for
There.
not being shy. There we go. Thank you for not being shy. All right. So these are the escape sequences because this is the escape character on your keyboard. And this is like super old school. This is like going back to the late 70s, early 80s of the previous century. So this won't work directly on the Windows console because, well, because Microsoft, but everywhere else in the universe it does, including on Replit. Okay, so if I were to copy this over to Replit, let's go here. You see all this stuff on the screen? And let me run it again with this Python, and this just happens to be the name of the file. See? It went to the top of the screen, first row, first line, and cleared it, and then the program exited. Because that's all it did. Okay, so it works in Replit. Do you have any questions about the project so far? Okay.
I don't really know how to ask this. But
I'm already married. Okay.
But how is it supposed to be an integer dice?
Well, do you recall our friend rand int?
Yes.
Right, so let's take a look at
Rand
rand int with the console in Replit. Okay, so let's see, is my console still live? I have to make sure that I have rand int. So that would be from random import rand int. And for the purposes of today's lecture, I'm also going to import something else, and that's called choice. But let's look at rand int. So rand int is going to return a single integer with the minimum value being the first parameter and the maximum value being the second parameter. So this is what an ordinary die looks like. Hello. Okay, I guess I'll do it again. It seems to have disconnected me. Yeah, it disconnected me, so I have to say from random import rand int, and also I want to show you choice. Who said people don't have choice? Okay, there it is. It's in Python. So rand int, the minimum value and the maximum value. And on behalf of all people, I apologize that some places in Python, like in range, it goes up to 1 minus the second value. And in this case, in randint, it includes the second parameter. So this is what a die would look like. Okay. All right. Let's make sure we've gone over the project. Okay, this is using the for loop with the range. Writing your own functions. Now we've been using functions. For example, randint is a function, and we've been using it. What a function is a blob of code that we can execute instead of seeing all of the contents, all of the source code of this blob of code, we just package it in a pretty little box with a ribbon, give it a name, and then we can make use of it by calling the function. Each of these lines here has been a call of randint. So functions use parentheses, and they may or may not have parameters. So let me show you quickly how to define a function, which is covered. I bet I include where. Yes, so everything you need to know is in subchapter 6.1. See, by the time you get through the rest of the book, you'll have already done some of the chapters if you do them now as they come up. So it's def function, and I'll give it a parameter, and then a colon. So notice once again, the colon introduces stuff that's going to be indented. Print. Okay, and that's all I'm going to do in this function. Maybe I'll do one more thing. Return of a string. And now no more. I just hit return, no more indenting. So func is a new function that I've declared, And without parentheses, it'll just tell you, hey, this is a function. But with the parentheses, that's an error, because notice I have no argument, I have no parameter, but I defined func as requiring a parameter. So this time I'll call it correctly. Okay, and notice this was the value that came back, was returned. Now we've seen randint returns a random integer. That's what I mean by a return. So I could say a variable equals func 19. And that printout came from the function, but also coming from the function is the return value. Okay. Now, why are functions good? Functions are good for all sorts of reasons. Reason number one is it helps you understand your code by breaking your code down into, wait for it, functional pieces. Okay, so that way, well, just frankly, the shorter your code is, the easier it's going to be to understand. And let's say I was able to encapsulate or hide 50 lines of Python inside func. So whenever I want to use those 50 lines, I need only the function to call the function. So reason number one is that it helps you, functions help you understand your code by making your code more logical, more intuitive. Second reason is perhaps you need to repeat those 50 lines of code more than once in your program in different places. So imagine if we didn't have functions, you'd literally have to repeat those 50 lines of code again and again and again in different places in your code where you needed the use of those lines of code. So again, the value of functions is that it embodies and encapsulates a potentially long list of Python statements so that even if you use those statements from different places in your code, you've still only entered that code once. So think about it. Yeah, go ahead.
So does that mean that you have to build the function at the beginning of your code in like your file? Just like we had to import randint last time?
In many languages, a function has to be declared before it is used. In Python, I've mentioned a few times, Python is like, yeah, sure, whatever. So Python's really chill. You can add the function in, you can use the function before you added it or add the function before you use it.
But we'll still have to build that function in this block of code.
Yes,
in
in your project, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So let's take a look at the text talking about the function. Okay, so because the printing of the histogram is happening potentially thousands of times, you create a function out of it so that all you have to do is say print histogram inside your loop, rather than making your loop longer and longer and longer by putting in the code to do the histogram printing. Okay, so print histogram is the function I'm going to ask you to write, and it takes two parameters. One is the trial number, and that's printed at the top. I'll show you again in a moment. And then the histogram itself. That's the list. So just showing you again. Here is the value of t. And this is the values retrieved from the list with the passed in to the function as the variable histogram. Okay. So you'll also get to use list sum, SUM. The sum is necessary to figure out what the, that was cool. Let's do, all right. So the sum was necessary to figure out what these relative percentages are. That's not going to do anything. Okay. So any questions about this? Any questions about the project?
This is a question for all the projects.
Go ahead.
Are they graded on if they work or if the code is good, for lack of a better word?
So for the purpose of this class, which is certainly a beginner's class, it's really graded on whether or not they work. And I will make suggestions and give feedback if your code is, quote, ugly.
All right.
Okay. So, you know, coding, good code does have a beauty to it, an elegance. And no matter what it is that you're trying to accomplish, there's an infinite number of ways of accomplishing it. And some ways of accomplishing a purpose are more elegant than others. Now, people who are like hot for Python are actually snobs. They'll look at your code and say, oh, that's not terribly Pythonic. It's like, screw you, it works. Would that be your answer, Colin?
Yes, just if they work.
Yeah, yep, right. So as you folks go out into the field, practicing your major, I think you can have in the back of your mind a desire to improve your code, but for your purposes, you're not computer scientists by and large. You just want the answers to the questions that you have. And so I'd say more power to you if it works, right? That's the important thing. Now, if I ever said that to CS majors, well, I would never say that to CS majors.
Can I ask what just happened with the code right here?
Which what? Oh, you mean on the screen?
Yeah, why it came out with like expected, 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 expected.
Oh, somehow my finger kind of slipped, and I copied and pasted all these values. And so it said, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work.
Okay.
Okay. So that was just a boo-boo on my part. Okay. So I promised you some choice. And to show that, I will go to a REPL. As they say on Reddit, TIL, don't have Chinese food for breakfast on the day that you're teaching. Yeah, it's a challenge. Okay, so here's a list. And it is, oh, I don't know, this one. Rock, paper, scissors. Okay, now the way that we chose one of these at random is we did an import of random. No, we didn't. We said from random import rand int. Then let's loop this 10 times for I in range of 10. So that's going to loop 10 times. Print something from L chosen at random, rand int. And it's going to be from 0, choose a random integer, from 0 through the length of L minus 1. That's how you were choosing the computer choice for rock, paper, scissors. So let's try this. And disconnected me again. Okay. Okay. All right. So allow me to introduce choice, also from the random package. So I'm going to say randint, comma, choice. And here's how you use it. And you'll see that it's much simpler. There. Let's try that. Okay. So what choice does is, given a list, for example, it will choose one of the members and return one of the members at random, by random. And I showed you the first way to get you to have, if I had just shown you choice first, you wouldn't have seen the underlying mechanism by which choice makes its choice. And you wouldn't have seen randint. Randint is an important one for us. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, so class, let's see, the deadline projects, the review. I've shown you project 2. We did help from the book. We looked at screen clearing, and I'll tell you what, let's just see what would you get if you did this screen clearing code in the middle. I'll copy it from here and paste it back into the replit. And what this is going to do is clear the screen in between printing each time. So let's make that 100. Run this again. That went by so quickly that you didn't see it happen, but you'll notice that there's only one line on the screen. Now, let's say you put in a number that's really too big. I don't even know if that's going to work, but okay. And that number is like really, really big. So, oh my gosh, I don't want to wait for this to end. Sorry, I'm coughing in your ears. So if you're in this case where your program is just running and running and running and you want it to stop, you can break it by pressing the Control key on your keyboard and the C at the same time. Control C is known as the keyboard interrupt. Okie doke. So it's 10:54. Why don't we write a program? And you can use choice, and you can also use randint, and we'll do something fun. So let's create a Dungeons and Dragons non-playing character non-playing character stats. Okay, So some of the things that I want you to do is input a character name, choose an alignment, and let's say we have alignments of, the typical chaotic, neutral, and evil. Okay, now let me get rid of that.
It's lawful is the last one.
Lawful, okay.
Yeah,
And what's the other one? Behavior would be evil?
I guess so. I mean, it's a kind of a grid because then
Yeah.
there's good, neutral, and evil.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And what's that called then?
We can
Choose
call it behavior.
behavior?
We
Behavior,
can call it
okay.
behavior.
So that would be what? Lawful also again?
No,
And,
good, neutral, and evil.
all right, so good, neutral, and evil. So let's do a strength. And so these numeric attributes, let's do something interesting. So numeric attributes include strength, and that goes from, let's say, 0 to 18, and let's call it dexterity. We'll do that, 0 to 18, and how about we'll keep this short, and we'll do constitution. And that'll be 0 to 18. Now for each of these, let's do something special. For each of the above, if the value is 18, choose a secondary value from 0 to 100. Example, 1867. Okay. Then one final thing, and then there's a health. And just choose at random from, let's say, 18 to 36. Okay? So that's our goal for the remainder of this class. So why don't we break it down? So who can help me write the code for the character name?
Input.
Okay, so let's say name equals input.
And then select a character name.
Okay. Very good. All right, that's done. How about health? That seems to be a straightforward one because it's none of this fancy 0 to 18, and if it's 18, you get this other number. Okay, so how about we do the health? Actually, since we're going to print right away, let's do the alignment and behavior. Forgive me. So print let's put in some. There's always, you could play different races. Let's say choose race, and that would be elf, orc, human, and a rare breed of evil boss characters, professor. Okay. So print name is I don't need spaces. So what I want to say is name is a chaotic, neutral professor. But if I do it all in this one print statement, it's going to get really, really long. So let me print out a partial line by saying end equals an empty string. So that's going to print name is and then leave the cursor there. Okay, so how about let's print the alignment. Oh, well, maybe I need to create a list of the alignments that I could pick from at random. So how can I do that?
Alignment equals brackets list. So the
Okay.
chaotic, neutral, lawful.
Okay. And while we're here, let's do behavior. Same way? Should I do it the same way? Makes sense.
I think so.
And what's that going to be? Good, neutral, and evil. Okay. Now, I keep saying to you, write a little, test a little. So I'll tell you what, let's test a little. Okay, so all I want now is to print out the alignment and no new line character in the printout. So how can I do that? I want to pick an alignment at random. I want to choose one at random. That's one of those George Washington's white horse questions.
Yeah, you're gonna have to import choice from random though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. And I think I'll need integers also.
Yeah.
So I'll import both from random. That was a good one. Import rand int and choice. Okay. Okay, back to the alignment. So how can I choose an alignment at random? Okay, how can I choose an alignment at random? Come on, you guys
y'all.
are,
Come on, y'all. I talk
What?
too much.
yeah, yeah. Say something before Milo talks again.
Something
Confused.
before Milo talks again.
That's a good answer, but I think it'll cause a syntax error in Python. So how about choice of alignment, chosen from alignment, and I know that we want to continue writing on the same line. Okay, we wrote a little. Let's test a little. Okay, so Murray is lawful, and it looks pretty clear to me from this output that I need to put a space there. Okay, and otherwise it looks pretty good. So let's add some more functionality. And let's do the behavior. Behavior. And I think I'm going to need some more spaces. So what I'm going to do is just add a space up here. I wonder if that'll give me too many spaces. Let's find out. Yep, too many spaces. Oh, well. Okay. So I'll put a space. I wonder if this will work. I don't think it will, but let's try. Yep, that's an error. Can't do that. I still haven't solved this problem. I want exactly one space.
Could you add a space before the choice behavior?
Okay, let me try that. Nope. Hey, I got an idea. What exactly does this end parameter do? Well, it's the last thing printed. So tell you what, let me make that a space. Okay. All right. So let's choose a race. And I guess we're going to need a space there also. And that will end the line. So I'll get a new line after this.
We don't have a list for races yet, though.
Oh, okay. So races, and let me change that to races, is elf and orc and human and professor. Okay. Neutral evil professor. Okay. Let's do the health next because that's the easiest. And then we have to define our own function to do the numeric attributes. Okay, so please tell me how I can do health. Just print. And then what? No, it's just, okay, I've set you up. You tell me how to do a value, random value between 18 and 36 inclusive.
Could you do rand int and then inside the parentheses 18 comma 36?
Exactly right. Thank you. Okay, so we wrote a little. Let's test a little. Okay, good so far. All right. Now, I want you to write a function. Let's call it stat. And it doesn't need any arguments that chooses a random integer from 0 through 18 if and only if the value is, whoops, is 18, choose a second number. Whoops, there goes the implementer. Choose a second number from, you don't say. Okay, choose a second number from 0 to 100. Return. Now, if you return a number, how would you return two numbers? In other words, I want to do the printing down here. Okay, so something like print strength and then stat. And print no, not behavior. What did I say? Strength, dexterity, and constitution. So look at the value of using a function, right? Because I need to call it this code over and over again, but I only had to define it once. Okay. So here's how I'll start you off, but then I'd like to see if you can do this. And so it'd be def stat colon. And for now, I'll just return that as sort of a stub. And I've stubbed so that I can do a test. Okay, so your job is to fill in this according to return a string with the chosen values. Okay, that's your job. You have 18 minutes. Feel free to talk out loud.
Yeah, I started writing things on a note card, but I've got return a randint from 0 to 18, and I think it should be an if statement next. But I don't know if randint counts as a variable.
Well, you can assign it to a variable.
So would I just put that under the return? The return is like x equals randint?
No, a
Or-
return statement leaves the function.
Ah, gotcha.
So as soon as a return is executed, the function is over and it returns back to whoever called it.
Okay. Okay.
So down here is the call. And so the return currently is of the text something. So that's
Okay.
why something was printed here.
Okay. So return, insert whatever, is going to be the last thing that we have in
Correct.
this. Okay.
Correct. Yep. So your code goes
Okay.
there.
Can you
Yeah.
assign an if statement to a variable? Is that a thing?
No. No, for purposes of this class, no. Notice I hedged my answer. But for the purposes of CSC 1100, let's say no. But why don't we try, we're going to write a little, code a little, write a little, test a little, right? So if you try to write 1,000 lines, you're creating a pretty big haystack. And if there's a problem in there, you got to find the problem in 1,000 lines. So let's write 1 or 2 lines and test. So Milo had an idea of doing a rand int. I think it was Milo, right?
Yeah.
So how about the
I assigned it
base?
to X.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm going to assign it to something else.
Okay.
Base stat equals rand int, and it's from 0 to 18.
Mhm.
Now I'd like to return that, but folks, what is the type of base stat, and what did I ask you to return? And is there a way of converting from whatever it is that base stat is to a string? Now, we did talk about it a few classes ago. Okay. I think we can agree that base stat is an integer, but I want you to return a string.
And is that by putting it? I know that we learned how to turn things into integers, which was int parentheses, put it inside. So whatever
Good.
little code for turn it into a string and then put it in parentheses.
Was it
Yes.
STR?
Yes, good. STR, you are both right. So return base stat. Okay, so I wrote a little. Let's test a little. And look at that. I'm getting values. Let's see if I can get an 18. No, none that time. None that time. Figures. Hey, maybe just to make sure our characters aren't born dead, why don't we make it a 1 to 18?
Yeah, I noticed that. They're not going to be able to take a hit for anything with a concentration
Right.
of 0.
Right. Okay, so how about, I'm going to show you a way to do this. So if and only if the base stat is 18, do we choose something else? So here's one way of doing it. We could, to make, well, how about this? How about additional stat is a blank string. And that way we can always return it. Makes our code a little bit cleaner. Instead of a special case or an if statement down here, we can always return additional stat because it starts out as a null string. Let's try that. Yep, looking good. All right. Suggestion for what I should do next. Okay. What should I put in there? And let's get somebody, Kieran or Catherine or Colin P. Or Riley. Can I get some human interaction from you? You're calling him, but go ahead.
I can't tell if you said something else because I just lagged.
Okay. Well, I would love it if Kieran or Catherine or Colin P. or Riley were to help me out here.
To be honest, I don't know anything about D&D, so I don't know what goes next in this sort of thing.
Okay. Well, this doesn't depend upon D&D. The directions are right here.
Oh.
So if the base stat is 18, compute a second stat. So
So would you just do where it would be like if and then base stat equals 18, then you'd do an input for something new?
okay, a calculation for something new. Okay, no more input, just the only input is the name. So if the base stat is 18, how about the additional stat is what? There needs to be a string.
You wrote additional state.
I was gonna say that.
That's muscle memory. You've noticed that every time I've tried to write state, except once, I've been counting. I wrote state instead of stat. Okay, thank you for that.
Would
Okay, well,
you
let's just-
use the rand int function again, but instead of 1 to 18, we'll go from 1 to 100?
Okay, well, how about 0 to 100? Yeah. Okay,
TR out front.
say it again.
With STR out front because it has to be a string.
Oh,
right?
Awesome. You took away my opportunity to show a mistake. Can't have that. Okay, let's try this. And it's going to be functionally correct, but we want to pretty it up a little bit. Of course, we have to see an example. Okay. Let's see, rand int should include the last number, right? Yeah, it does. So why am I so unlucky? Because it's random, that's why. Oh, wait a minute, I got one. Here it says strength is 1853. So let's pretty this up a little bit. And I'll say here is a string, which is a space and a slash and a string. And remember, I can concatenate two strings by what looks like addition. Well, be nice to get one again. That's the problem with random. Oh, look, I got one. Okay, so in this program, we got to use choice with a list. And we used input. We didn't do any fancy formatting, but we did write our own function. And we saw the value of having our own function because I need, in this case, to use it 3, potentially more times. I need to use that code. So instead of writing out all these lines over and over and over again, I embed them in my own function that I called stat. And now I can just reuse stat over and over and over again. Okay. So you have a reading that's due tonight, I believe. And there's a project now assigned, project 2, that's due next week. Now, reminder, we have a tutor in this class that you can make appointments with, Bailey Wellen. So B Wellen, W-E-L-L-E-N. And you can also book time with me or send me email. The deadline, and it's a hard deadline for the first project, is tonight. So I'll start grading tomorrow. And if you're one of the folks who didn't buy the book, my last comment, if you're one of the folks who didn't buy the book, please do so. It's a big part of your grade. Okay. And happy dungeon crawling. You now have a NPC generator. Okay. We have a couple of minutes left. Anybody have questions?
I just wanted to check and make sure you received my project submission. Because now I'm a
Okay.
little paranoid.
All right, so I'll stop the sharing. I am happy to feed into your paranoia. That's what I do. Okay, so go here and projects. And I have a submission. I will take a look inside. And looks good. And thank you. It even has your name in the top.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, would you mind possibly also checking mine?
Sure. Sure. Let me go. Okay, I have a submission from you, and I'll check to see what's inside. And yep, you've got your name at the top too. Thank you very much. I see some code here.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you also be willing to check mine? I'm not sure if I like submitted it correctly.
I was gonna
Okay.
say, but I was gonna say at the end of class.
Okay, so who just spoke? Besides
I
looking
did.
at the others.
Catherine.
I did. Okay. And so let me just check. And yes, I have a submission. And it's got code, and your name is at the top.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, there was one person more that I'll check. And then
It was yeah, it was me. I'm sorry.
okay, there we go. And check. Let me look again. Okay, good. All right. And yes, I have a submission. And it says web archive. I don't know what that is.
That's odd.
Yeah, so I can't open it.
I'll send it again then. Is it just
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask the way that we submit it. We
Yeah,
go
how
into
do
the REPL. We go into the REPL that we made. And
Yes.
then we go and we download the entire file as a .zip.
Yes. So you can download as zip, and then send that to me and I'll figure out the rest.
Okay.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming to this week's episode of something. I've run out of jokes. It's 11:31, therefore I am no longer responsible for jokes. So, thank you. We'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you. Have
Bye.
a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Stay
I just have
warm.
one quick
Yeah.
question. I realized when I submitted it last time that my name wasn't on it. Do you care if I resubmit it with my name at the top of the thing?
It's okay, but remember it next time, okay?
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Professor.
Yeah,
I just have one more question.
I'd be happy to answer.
So with the how do you download the repo and to try to post it? Because I tried to save it and then try to send it, but I think that's what happened.
Okay,
You couldn't see it.
all right, so I'm gonna share the browser again. And so there are, if you go here with the, you see how it's expanding? Files?
Yes.
On that line, there's 3
Oh.
vertical dots
Yeah.
and say download as zip.
Got it.
So doing that, it will go to your downloads directory, probably.
Mhm.
And then in Schoology, you would upload that ZIP, that zip file.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Okay. I just
Okay, okay.
downloaded it. Yep. Thank you so much.
Good, you're welcome.
Have a great day.
Thanks, bye-bye.